The horror stories are true. They wrote off my F-150 Lightning without a single diagnostic or battery test. With any undercarriage damage whatsoever, the secret policy kicks in, which has repair costs explode and pushes EVs to a total loss. In this video, I expose it all, what was deliberately not done, what Ford's own design and service process is, and what you can do before your EV gets totaled without cause due to lack of due diligence by your insurer. Let's blow the lid off this automatic write-off rule and get totally trucked up. Just a heads up that I will be moving my monthly Viewers Corner, featuring all of you and your picks, as a part of my monthly Trucked Update episode. So keep those pictures and adventures coming and look out for your own special spotlight in one of the upcoming ones. Don't forget, breaking stories and exclusive content, such as the reveal on what's been going on with this story, is always available for my Patreon and YouTube members, along with advanced releases of all my regular videos. So please consider joining. Okay, for those of you who don't know what's going on, I had an accident with Thor, my F-150 Lightning Flash. It was my fault. I caught a boulder with the front frickin' passenger tire, blew it apart, and pulled me and the truck into the ditch. Luckily, the damage seemed tolerable, but it was unsafe to drive out from the gravel road that I was on after the tow truck had lifted me out. The front rim was cut right open, the tire blown off, the ABS and traction control warning lights had lit up, the back passenger door had taken a small but very noticeable hit, and the passenger running board was toast. I had been able to get under the vehicle as well and saw that Ford's amazing armor plating and skid plates protecting the battery pack, motors, and wire harnesses had all done their jobs brilliantly and saved any impact or damage to the front motor and the front section of the battery assembly. There had been no impact or even contact to the entire battery pack beyond that point. No battery voltage or amperage warnings, powertrain, or related faults had gone off, and there was no indication from a diagnostics perspective that anything had suffered any kind of damage internally other than the front passenger wheel assembly. That was a total relief. I mean, I was stressed out. You know, it was a horrible day. Trust me, it's been a horrible time since. But I wasn't going to take any chances that day, and I had it towed to a yard, and I filed an insurance claim with ICBC, which is a provincial government insurer we have here in British Columbia, Canada. You have to insure your vehicle through them for your basic auto insurance. And there, Thor sat at the yard for over 3 weeks. Crickets, nothing, nada. After several calls and attempts to get an update, I found out that the insurer had actually lost or misplaced my file. I'd gone down the list, they'd screwed up. What came next, however, was the first indicator that I was entering a system where the outcome was already predetermined. I had asked them to tow my vehicle to a dealership where I knew they had a trained EV tech and could run all diagnostics on the motors, the internal, operating system, the batteries, to quickly rule out any remote potential issues before dealing with the bodywork. Previously, I'd made numerous calls to body shops, including those that were ICBC approved, and none of them had any EV specialist. So this seemed like a no-brainer. What came next was a series of shocking events you're just not going to frickin' believe. The first one was when they told me I had to send the truck to an ICBC-approved body shop, and after assessing the damage, if required, they would send it to a mechanic for further repairs. This set off alarm bells in my head as to why the sole insurer in the province of BC wanted me to send an EV to a place where there was no certified EV specialist. Furthermore, most of the shops were either busy or grew immediately and oddly less receptive when they found out it was an electric truck, a Lightning, as if they knew they weren't going to make a lot of money. I reluctantly complied and asked the underlying dealership that I had wanted to have it shipped to tell me who they would recommend. I then notified ICBC that this body shop would be the place to send it. Another week passed. Nothing. Then came flaming red flag number 2. Supposedly, ICBC had finally asked the tow company the original one that took me out of the ditch, to take some photos of the damage and forward them to their estimator over a full month after the accident. After numerous calls, I got in touch with the first assigned estimator, and what came from her mouth was a foreboding that something within the whole process smelled. She said, although it's an electric truck, we'll give it the benefit of the doubt and have it towed to the body shop anyway. At least that way, you can get some closure on this. Remember, no one has inspected the truck at this point, other than the tow truck driver and an estimator looking at the pictures he took. Inferno red flag number 3 ignited a few days prior to Thor being shipped to its latest boneyard when I went up to talk to the owner of the body shop. After some pleasantries and a great chat, nice honest guy, he warned me that things would likely not go that well. He said, I just want you to be prepared for how these things usually go with ICBC on EVs. If there's any undercarriage damage, it's almost always an automatic battery pack replacement. We've had Teslas and Konas with visibly no damage, but ICBC said there's no way to tell. There's no way to check these things inside. That's the problem. And there was the first glaring FUD narrative I was going to face down. Firstly, the guy openly and honestly admitted that he knew little about how battery packs worked, or how they were built, or what internal monitoring systems existed within them. He's a professional body shop, and according to him, he was just, quote, following the rules. That's right, the rules. The ICBC rules. Before we go further, we have to see how laughable this narrative is, in that ICBC is treating all battery pack designs as one and the same. The F-150 Lightning, along with the Mach-E, every GM and Chevy EV product, and close to half of all EVs in production use modular battery packs and are nothing, absolutely nothing, like a Tesla or a Hyundai or a Kia product. Let's look at the battery assembly of the Lightning. The first line of defense is the massive armor-based protection that, along with every other part of the overall assembly, is isolated and not directly attached to the battery pack itself. It covers the entire length of the truck's undercarriage, heavily protecting the front, the rear electric motors, the thermal system, the wiring and hoses leading into the battery pack assembly from the front, and the battery pack itself that's above it. But like I said before, it's isolated. It's not just bolted or glued to the bottom of the main battery pack like you'll see in some vehicles. In fact, the battery pack isn't really a unified battery pack, but I'll get to that. It's so impressive, you'll be blown away by how far Ford went. The armor is attached to a separate floating frame, completely independent of the main frame via a series of large flexible bushings. What's more is this armor-plated subframe, we'll call it, creates a substantial gap between the armor plating facing the ground and the battery pack above it by a physical space and a corrugated, heat-dissipating, we'll call it a crumple zone of more metal. Ford thought of everything here, as this was its first major EV, and it was of its flagship, its top seller, so they overbuilt the crap out of it. The auto body owner aptly referred to the bottom of the Lightning as, I quote, a damn tank. It is all meant to be sacrificial, to absorb impact, shock, and penetration. In other words, in the case of an impact, an object would first have to smash through the 1/8 inch thick steel armor plating or bend the hell out of it, and then pass through the 3-inch thick crumple zone corrugated part, and then the crash gap between that and the battery housing itself. And now you'll see how insanely overbuilt this really is. The housing is, well, what's a good way to explain it? It's a large, watertight, environmentally sealed bathtub. And this huge tub is not just for the batteries, but the BMS, yeah, I know, more acronyms, the battery management system, a huge array of sensors, all the related components and wiring associated with the batteries, and then the batteries themselves, all of which are again isolated. So if a freaking howitzer shell-like projectile gets this far, it still has to penetrate the frickin' tub. But once inside, the batteries themselves are isolated and cushioned to withstand shock and broken down into 9 separate replaceable modules, each one monitored by the onboard system and designed to limit any potential of damage or thermal runaway. The best part, and part is the word here, is that all of it is fully repairable based on each individual component. You want the tub? We've got a tub. You want the armor? We've got the armor. You want the floating frame? Check, got one of those. You need a module? No problem, sport. How many? The dealership I wanted to go to at first has done many repairs and fixes on Lightnings without issue, either under warranty or due to a later fault. And there's the thing. Ford has its own diagnostic software and a series of sensors within the pack that can provide a vast amount of data as to the state of health or one more, of the modules, the thermal system, the inverter, the charger, and on, just like it can on most modern internal combustion engines. Here's a crucial point to drive this important fact home. These packs have warranties that are sometimes 3 times as long as on any internal combustion engine or transmission. Do you think these OEMs would leave their product that vulnerable without a means of risk mitigation on a warranty of that duration? Before these things roll off the assembly line and off to the customer, the automakers want every one of them leaving to be as warranty risk-free as possible, because the warranty work is a direct drain on the company's profits with zero benefit, other than for the dealership service departments. But we haven't even got to the most shocking part. ICBC didn't look at any of it. In fact, it refused to. It's already decided every electric vehicle's fate involved in an accident where there is any undercarriage damage long before it is ever sent to the shop. The ramifications of this are so far-reaching, and I'm going to show how this impacts every EV owner in my province and every EV insurance policy. Here's how I know this. After 2 more weeks of waiting, I called up the body shop. He says, I got bad news. I say, what? Looks like the battery pack was pushed up and the battery assembly will have to be fully replaced. And that's like over 60 grand. To clarify what he's talking about when he refers to the entire battery assembly, he means the entire bottom of the truck being replaced, other than suspension and the 2 motors. No, I'm not kidding. All of it. The floating frame, the armor, everything goes. That's the assembly. Basically, it's most of the truck. I argued that the pack is fully repairable and can be easily purchased by each individual component. So how was that possible? I saw no such sign of any part of the battery pack being pushed up. I looked directly at the pack. There was nothing changed with it. He said that here is where he's had some confusion on the pack and the assembly, that there was this battery pack frame that was bent at one point. You wouldn't believe it when I show it to you. You're going to see it and laugh. And when he had called the dealership, the service department had said that in such a case, it would have to be replaced. I then called the dealership in question and demanded to know why they had recommended replacing an entire assembly when there was absolutely no sign of damage or bending or shifting of the bathtub-like bucket that we talked about before. Turns out that the so-called battery pack bend and shifting, you'll see this, what was to the floating frame, and only by a few millimeters. But ICBC required it to be treated all as one part. Time out here. Fairness to the dealership. No photos were ever shared with the service department. They were going off what they were being told, and in his own words, he was under the impression from the body shop that, quote, the whole battery pack was effed. The dealership insisted I contact ICBC and demand the truck be towed to them, and they could inspect the battery, no problem, hook it up and diagnose it, and know concretely if there was any kind of damage whatsoever, along with inspecting the tub, the frame, the floating frame, etc. It soon became clear that it wasn't the body shop's fault either. It had reported this because ICBC required it to be treated as one piece. It was getting its marching orders from the insurance estimator, who in turn was getting theirs from the insurance company's own internal policy. I decided to go up to the vehicle and document the entire undercarriage. I decided to pop down and take a look at where there's damage on the actual battery pack. You can see there's I think 6 or 8 bushing points, attachment points that go onto the frame. You see that there. There's no damage to this one. Everything's level, and you can see there's a space. It runs between the battery pack. See that? Above there's the battery pack. That's the battery pack housing. It's not actually the battery pack itself. That's inside this case. You can see there's this big gap. You can see there's no impact to the battery pack. You can see also that this is, I don't know if you can see that, but there's no bend. There's the weld spots. You can see there, if I can get the camera level like that, you can see there's no bend point anywhere along the armor plating that is between the battery housing that holds the pack and the battery itself. So where is the damage? You look back here, I go underneath, you can see here, I'm trying to just do a little bit of, see that there's a skid plate, there's the back tire, there's a skid plate coming up, no impact, okay? And there's the plate right here. You can see the plating there attaching to that back one. We're gonna go over and do the same on the other side. When we look at this side, we can see again, there's one of the attachment points. There's the other attachment point. There's the battery above it. You can see again, there's no distortion. There's no damage to the pack whatsoever. There's the back skid plate that protects the rear motor. Okay, here is the other point. That's the bushing and holding the protection right there underneath. You can see there's the other one right there at the front. It's covered by this plastic bucket right here. This is plastic here. And now we come to the end of the battery pack. There's the front of the battery pack right there. You can see that nothing contacted it. There's no skid, there's no damage. What is damaged is this. This plate got completely, you can see that just curved right up. It took the brunt of it right here. Right there, you should be able to see how pushed in that is. And it did its job. That big, huge chunk of metal took the brunt of that hit head on with that boulder. But what's interesting is all the fuss is about the battery pack. But the battery pack didn't get touched. Even with this thing completely bent, it never made contact with the battery pack whatsoever. And there's no change to the shape of the battery pack. And again, that's not the battery pack, that's the battery housing. There it is, out of this entire battery pack. Out of the entire armor plating frame under the main part of the battery pack, not that front one that took that huge brunt and got bent right in. The only damage to this entire battery pack frame all the way up the vehicle is right here that I noticed the day that I crashed. And it's 1 inch by 1 inch. I wouldn't even require the insurance company to do any replacement of it. There's a little, there's a little dent. Didn't even hit the bushing. It's attached, but you can see that the bushing is off center. See that? And that's it. That is the only thing that I can see right there, about 3 millimeters. And that's from that little dent right there. And it looks like the bolt. Not the frame, nothing else. It looks like the bolt itself. That bolt looks like it's bent. The frame was so tough, it didn't bend. The only thing that seems to have bent was the bolt. Anyway. After waiting yet another 3 weeks. I got a one-page email from ICBC. Quote, I am the reassigned ICBC estimator handling the review of damages and repair costs for your vehicle at the body shop. I have reviewed the estimate and photos submitted by the body shop and confirmed the repair costs have exceeded the maximum allowance to repair the vehicle, therefore deeming the vehicle a total loss. I called this estimator and demanded an explanation. I first asked her to disclose the maximum threshold limit that ICBC had refused on several occasions to reveal, and finally gleaned that it was just over $48,000 Canadian. This is massive. I then said, well, there's only one way that you could exceed that, and that's if you replaced the entire undercarriage of my truck. I then demanded to have ICBC send me the photos in question, the very photos that proved the battery pack was damaged, that it could not be salvaged, along with the body shop's full estimate. I then demanded she explain how she could know that the battery pack was damaged when they had not done any due diligence and hadn't even requested a simple inspection and zero diagnostics of the battery pack itself. She responded with, quote, batteries are not repaired, they're replaced, unquote. Clearly not understanding, or more appropriately, not giving a shit, that okay, but why is the insurer making zero effort to find out if the batteries need to be replaced, not repaired? And if so, is it a single module? A couple of modules? Pretty easy and cheap to find out. I made every attempt to explain to her that what she was estimating to be replaced wasn't just batteries, but was the entire operating drive system of the truck other than the motors. She said, yes, that's correct. Here are the photos the estimator says justified the need for the replacement of the entire battery assembly. As I already knew from the previous videos that you had there that I shot, there was clearly zero battery pack damage, and one of the two damning photos provided to declare the truck a total loss had absolutely nothing to do with the battery pack, but was in fact a part of the comprehensive armor plating. The bent frame that was pushed up was, according to the body shop, a third photo proving damage, but ICBC didn't even use this and didn't even send it to me to make their case. And as I previously showed in the video, it involved a bent bolt, a shifted bushing, and a dent to the armor plating no larger than my thumb. What's even more nuts than that is this picture of the freaking harness plug. They said this compromised the entire battery pack. Can you see the damage? Yeah, neither can I. But if you look really close, the rubber casing of the plug, you see that blue clip down there? That's a quick release. These plugs can just be pulled off. It's $55 or something like that. And the rubber that's scraped, there's a scrape on the rubber. I don't even think it happened in the accident. I'm thinking that's something I coughed up at some point off the highway. It's just a scuff on a battery harness plug. It didn't even penetrate it. And the plug rubber that's damaged, that's what the rubber's for. That's there to protect the wiring. Naturally, I then insisted that the truck be towed the 10-minute drive to the battery tech at the dealership and be properly diagnosed. She replied, we have all that we need to determine the battery pack is damaged. If I wanted to dispute the claim, it would be all at my cost. The only way I could fight them would be to dispute the claim, bring in lawyers, pay for everything, and after a 2 or 3 month battle, and only if I ended up being successful, it would be yet another month or two to have it fixed, only to have a Lightning with a scratch on its accident report and devalued beyond reason. They had me. And at this point, I don't want the truck back. It's been almost 3 months since the accident. This has disrupted my life, caused me undue financial hardship, and I'm done with it. The claim is closed. Thor has already been towed to the salvage yard, and the check is cut and in the mail, which they're saying will take another month because our postal service is on strike. Great. So why put this out in a video? Shouldn't I just shut up, not rock the boat, look the other way, and just move on? Then what happens to whoever gets screwed after me? Luckily, I kept everything documented. I recorded every discussion and every interaction and have on record various parties outright stating that if an electric vehicle suffers any damage to the assembly, armor plating, floating frame, or the main undercarriage, the entire battery assembly would be replaced and thus a total loss. I have it on good authority that numerous body shops have sent a multitude of EVs with similar situations as Thor off to the scrapyard as total losses with no actual diagnosis ever done of the battery pack to ascertain if in fact there was any damage to the battery pack itself. We obviously have scrapyards all over this country filled with total loss EVs housing perfectly fine, undamaged battery packs. I don't get why this is. I can only assume that this is due to extremely outdated policy and intractable bureaucracy at ICBC still following guidelines from when it wasn't that easy to repair an EV battery assembly. But there's now a rapidly growing number of independent companies and auto dealerships that are more than capable of diagnosing and repairing these fleets. But ICBC is deliberately undermining it all. They're outright refusing to do the diagnostics, send it to EV auto dealership tech inspections, or send the vehicles to dedicated EV tech repair companies, directing them all instead to the scrap yards and salvage auctions. I said I'd mention ramifications. Think about this. Ultimately, ICBC is knowingly and artificially inflating the cost of repair on electric vehicles and are treating all battery assemblies as one, failing or unwilling to recognize the vast differences between glued, unprotected, structural, standard passenger car modular, and robust armor-plated modular EV truck assemblies. This is the reason for all these horror stories about entire battery packs needing to be replaced because of one tiny dent. It's because it's true, but it's not because of the battery pack. That's not where the problem lies. EVs are not the primary issue here. It's the outright negligence and intentional devaluation of electric vehicles by an insurance organization that chooses to damage the reputation of the EV market in favor of an internal, inflexible bureaucracy that should be exposed for its blatant disregard for almost 20% of Canada's light-duty vehicles on the road today. This will, in turn, eventually, artificially and intentionally inflate the long-term costs of insurance on EVs. My insurance rate will go up dramatically. If the repair work would have been done properly without the full battery assembly replacement, which, as far as we know, is not required in any way, the body shop has already concurred that the overall damage and cost of repair wouldn't have exceeded $20,000 Canadian or $15,000 US. Instead, the cost of repair was artificially inflated, get this, to an insane $84,000 on a vehicle I bought new for $77,000 Canadian. I will do everything I can to bring this dark travesty into the light, to sound the alarm over a provincial insurer seemingly causing undue financial hardship for its customers and failing to carry out the most basic due diligence on a vehicle's repair assessment based on an, ideological view and so-called abundance of caution approach, which accurately is a euphemism for we don't give a shit about EV losses. And here's my response to that so-called caution argument, that there's no way to tell, the internal damage that might rear its ugly head later. It goes something like this. What if there was some sort of jostling of the pack through all those bushings and redundant layers of protection and crumple impact points that are all isolated and seem to have suffered no damage, and was still triggered even though the front armor plate took almost all of the impact force, somehow miraculously beaming that destructive energy into the center of an isolated battery module or modules, and that, months down the road, would melt down in a conflagration of doom. That's like saying someone backed up into your Chevy Suburban and pushed in the bumper, but the energetic beam was a force field, and it could have internally transferred to the head gasket via diabolical uber forces, and 6 months later the engine might blow up, so f*** it. Let's just write off the whole f***ing Suburban. ICBC deliberately plugs its ears and closes its eyes when shown that all the diagnostic tools to determine that risk are already readily available. This kind of mishandling of the financial protection surrounding our vehicles needs to stop, and EVs should be assessed as comprehensively, robustly, and fairly as carried out for any internal combustion vehicle on the road. Hey, 76% of my viewers who keep coming back and enjoying my videos never subscribe or click the like button, but based on your huge boost of amazing positive comments, I'm guessing a lot of you do like it. This tiny action determines the success or failure of small channels like mine, so please give me a hand and click below. As always, thanks for watching.